The hits keep coming.
NASCAR star Bubba Wallace announced on Twitter today that he is parting ways with Richard Petty Motorsports, the team that brought him into the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, what Wallace did not announce is where he is headed in the 2021 NASCAR season. It's also unclear what Richard Petty Motorsports plans to do in the 2021 season. So those of you clicking on this video expecting a get woke, go broke story are unfortunately going to get the opposite. This is kind of the rare example where Bubba Wallace got woke and got extremely wealthy. And that has a lot of implications because the way auto racing works is completely different than most sports. In most sports, it really doesn't matter how much money you have. It matters, it's totally dependent on your talent, whether you get good rides or whether you get bad rides or get signed up for good teams or bad teams. In racing, your pocketbook can take you a very long way. And I'm not saying that to disparage Bubba Wallace or disparage the fact that he has obviously, one way or the other, earned the sponsorships of stuff like Cash App, Columbia Sportswear, McDonald's, even though I'm not sure if they will stick with him or stick with Richard Petty. I'm going to make a guess that McDonald's will probably go with Bubba wherever he goes. But what that means for Bubba Wallace is he suddenly has a lot of opportunity in NASCAR. And as a race car driver, you have to take advantage of every opportunity that's given to you. And I think what happened here is Bubba Wallace looked at the situation with Richard Petty Motorsports. And I think if you're someone in racing who looks at that kind of objectively, not through kind of the lens of, wow, I love the 43 team, it's so nostalgic, I love Richard Petty. If you look at it from an objective standpoint, and I'm sure Bubba did this too, and that's why he made this decision, there's a performance ceiling for the Richard Petty Motorsports team. It's never going to get to the level of Rick Hendrick. It's never going to get to the level of Joe Gibbs. It's just not going to be there. That team, in my opinion, to be honest with you, the fact that Bubba Wallace, I mean, it seems like every time I tune into a NASCAR race, Bubba Wallace, within the last 10, 20 laps of the race, he's up there in the top 10. He usually doesn't finish there because either he wrecks or somebody else wrecks him, but he's usually up there at the end. And I have a feeling that the performance cap of that team is right about around 10th place. Bubba's not going to win races, or not even going to have the chance to win races in the 43 car. So, now that he has a lot more freedom, so to speak, with all these sponsors throwing out, you've got to imagine it's big bucks to have Bubba Wallace represent their brand. He's got to take that sponsorship to a team that can perform at a level that can win him races. And it just so happens that this particular offseason for NASCAR potentially has more opportunities to get in race-winning equipment than there has been in a very long time. So let's talk about a few of the options that Bubba Wallace will have, or supposedly will have. Obviously, we'll start out with the big one that everybody always says every time something becomes available in NASCAR. Could he take the 48 car, the Jimmy Johnson Hendrick Motorsports entry? My feeling is probably not. I have a feeling that, well, here's the thing. This could go two ways. If Rick Hendrick has that car fully funded and can choose his own driver, my guess is his first choice is not Bubba Wallace. If there is a financial concern for that car, whether or not it can get on the grid next year, clearly Bubba Wallace is going to be bringing a big check. So if there's ever a concern about the 48, whether or not it can be fully funded, whether Rick Hendrick wants to run 4 cars next year, I think that's the opportunity that Bubba Wallace would be able to take if it's available to him. Do I think it's available to him? No, I do not. The other opportunity, which, considering what happened in the coronavirus shutdown, would be extremely, extremely ironic, the 42 car, which apparently has been reported by, I think, Jenna Fryer and a few others, has actually been offered to Bubba Wallace. Now, the 42 car is obviously interesting for a lot of reasons. It's the Chip Ganassi racing car that was vacated very unceremoniously by Kyle Larson earlier this year for dropping an N-word. Bubba Wallace, of course, also lost sponsorship during the iRacing stuff. And ironically enough, it's one of the reasons that he ended up running a Black Lives Matter car, because Blue Emu was going to be his sponsor at Martinsville. They obviously left the team because of the iRacing. It opened the door for that, which set all of the rest of this stuff kind of in motion, which has led us to this point where Bubba Wallace is this extremely polarizing figure, but he's a figure that clearly a lot of brands want to associate with. It would be very ironic if he took all that sponsorship he earned through all the social unrest and the debate, that's countrywide at this point, really worldwide, took that to the 42 car and took that over. I think the real connection there is the McDonald's sponsorship, and also the fact that Matt Kenseth is probably not going to return there next year. Do I think it's a super high possibility? I think it's higher than the 48 car, but I feel like if it was going to happen, they would have announced that today, because I just don't think that's... Because, again, I think the Ganassi team is another team that just always seems to have a performance ceiling. Kyle Larson, we've seen what he's been able to do in the dirt, and some people will say that's invalid, but to me, Kyle Larson is an absolutely elite-level driver. Should be able to win in pretty much anything he steps foot into. The fact that he was not always a race-winning contender in Ganassi tells me pretty much everything I need to know about that Cup program. It's a little bit higher than RPM, but it's still below that elite level that you need to compete in the Cup Series. So the final rumor that's out there, which I find incredibly interesting, and it's been around in various forms, but there's some mysterious conglomerate around a Toyota team potentially taking over the engine lease that Levine Family Racing will vacate at the end of the year. Denny Hamlin is apparently connected to it, and even though it's been denied, and I think maybe it's not happening now, it could still happen. Michael Jordan, the basketball player, is associated with this potential rumor. So the idea would be that Bubba Wallace would either... I've heard this too, is that like Bubba Wallace would come in with all these sponsors, with Denny Hamlin and with the Toyota money, buy out the 43 team, or go out and start their own team. I don't know where they would get the personnel for this, but money talks, I suppose, and actually form a brand new Cup team that would be like Hamlin Motorsports or Jordan Racing or Bubba Wallace Racing, something like that. And that's very interesting. If that happens, that's going to be an absolute bombshell. It's been long rumored, but again, it's how likely is it? And does Bubba Wallace really want to become a team owner? Does Denny Hamlin want to become a team owner? Does Michael Jordan want to become a team owner? Or is this just the money team, the Floyd Mayweather money team again, where we're just going to go, oh, wow, this is happening, and then it just never happens? The other question, of course, is what happens to the 43 car? I have to feel like that's going to be a pay driver position, unless, of course, they get bought out. If they get bought out, who knows what's going to happen, especially if Bubba's the one buying the team. But again, you would think he wouldn't announce that he's leaving Richard Petty Motorsports. It would be like some weird thing where they'd be doing a handshake deal, and the king would be like, I'm handing the 43 car off to the next generation. Something like that. But that hasn't happened. So you got to think that somebody's going to be bringing sponsorship to that team. And they're probably... Here's the other thing, too, is that my guess would be whoever goes into that 43 car is probably not going to be as competitive as Bubba Wallace for a variety of reasons. Number one, probably going to be less sponsorship. And again, not necessarily saying that all paid drivers are of less quality than non-paid drivers, but I have a feeling that they're not going to get the absolute top market driver, especially with how many seats are open, at that 43 car. So I would imagine that the 43 car, even if it's even on the grid next year, will have a bit of a performance dip, no doubt about it. Maybe a Ty Dillon. I guess that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? Because Richard Petty Motorsports gets support from Richard Childress Racing. Ty Dillon appears to be out of a ride at Germain Racing. Maybe the 43 gets merged into Richard Childress Racing, something like that. I could see Ty Dillon would probably be my number one pick if I had one for the 43 car. Oh, we got a timer going down. That's a good opportunity to head into the next segment. Spinning off the Sergio Perez Formula One story from yesterday, the obvious choice was made. Sebastian Vettel will be racing for Racing Point / Aston Martin in next year's Formula One World Championship. So, this is like the most obvious rumor of all time. I'm surprised anybody thought that anybody else was going to Aston Martin Racing Point for next year. World champion in a mid-pack team. It's an interesting concept. We've obviously seen, again, I mentioned this yesterday, looking at the performance of Kimi Räikkönen, even though he's obviously a much older driver than Sebastian Vettel at Alfa Romeo, what's going to happen with Fernando Alonso at Renault / Alpine next year. That being said, it does seem like the Racing Point, even though, they have Mercedes parts on them and the car itself is virtually a clone of last year's Mercedes, it doesn't seem like the car is super, super, super competitive. It's definitely more competitive than it was last year. And it does seem like they can compete for podiums when Red Bull is having issues. But it doesn't seem like at this point that their own personal performance cap, and I've said that several times in this video, is such that Vettel is going to be competing for race wins. Now, that being said, you have to imagine that Sebastian Vettel is going to be the absolute number one driver on this team. Despite the fact, of course, that Daddy Stroll is running the team and Lance Stroll is almost certainly going to be the second driver at Aston Martin next year. You have to imagine they're going to give preferential treatment to Sebastian Vettel. I think you have to, because I think the big issue with Sebastian Vettel, especially with what happened with him at Ferrari, is that he was not motivated at Ferrari. I think he lost interest in the team. I think he lost faith in the team, and I think they lost faith in him. You have to put Sebastian Vettel, it seems, in a situation where there's absolute confidence. When he was at Red Bull and there was absolute confidence, he was unbeatable. Can he raise the profile of the Aston Martin team? Can he raise them into a potential race-winning team? I mean, all they have to really do is be able to pick up the pieces if something happens to Mercedes. I think that's going to be the story of Formula One for not only this year, but for the next year. It's going to be whether Mercedes doesn't have any issue, or whether Mercedes has issues, and who is going to be the team that capitalizes on it. We saw that in Monza. It was AlphaTauri that was the team that capitalized on the misfortunes of Mercedes. Aston Martin is going to have to be in that position starting next year. Really, they need to be in that position now. Ultimately, I think Lance Stroll threw away a win at Monza. I think we all saw that. So will Sebastian Vettel be that guy? Because we have seen him be very mistake-prone at Ferrari. His motivation is going to be a big key, and whether the car's performance is there. And that's the other question, too. Is Sergio Perez, who I think most people would probably say is the fastest driver on the Racing Point team as of right now, does that mean that Perez was getting the absolute maximum out of that car? Can Sebastian Vettel come in, help develop that machine, and make it better? I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see. Like I said, way back when this was first rumored, this is going to be the most even kind of swath of world champions across the grid that we've seen in a while. Kind of world champions at the front of the grid, at the middle of the grid, and the back of the grid. So next year is going to be pretty interesting from that perspective. And again, I think there are going to be a lot of eyes on that Aston Martin team, not just because it's going to be a green-colored car in Formula One the first time in a while, but because of the fact that Sebastian Vettel will raise the expectations of that team even higher, because this is going to be essentially, this is your best chance to see Sebastian Vettel in a Mercedes, because I don't think he's going to be racing for the AMG team anytime soon. So what did you think of this video? Let me know down in the comments. What do you think of Bubba Wallace, Sebastian Vettel to Aston Martin, anything? Hey, it's nice to have a bunch of things to talk about, isn't it? Hopefully this continues. I'll make a video every day if I have something to talk about from here until the end of quarantine. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.